All right, welcome to Imba Alpha 226. You may notice I'm not Sindra, the creator of Imba. I work for him. I'm Mikey, so nice to meet you. We'd like to publish more Imba content in general. It is kind of difficult to know how much to polish it, so I guess let us know in the comments or on Discord if you think this format works, because it's to make a really concise video, it's quite time consuming. So I'll without preparing too much, I'll go over the changes and yeah. So here we have accessors. So this was already possible in Imba, but the syntax for it changed a bit. So if we go to, actually it's in undocumented. So we can check out accessors here. And basically you can just delegate an object as the accessor for a property. So here you're essentially saying, make this object responsible for setting and getting name. So as you can see when we, where is it? When we get name and just access user.name, it actually returns uppercase value. So in terms of real world use cases for this, we're using it a lot in the coming ORM, but until that's out, one use case Sindra has used personally was local storage. So whenever you set a property, if you make like a local accessor for local storage, whenever you set a property, it can automatically save to local storage or something like that. So I'll try to make an example for that and put it in the docs. Yeah, so that's accessors. Next thing is flex layouts. I don't know if we emphasized in the announcement or the changelog how big of a deal. I think these are really awesome, but so what Imba already had these layouts. So if we type in layouts, we can go to, no, it was, bear with me here. See, yeah, you see, like, it'd be nice to cut out all these all these in-between moments, but that's very time-consuming. So we had these display values in Imba that Sindra added, and they've been super useful, but I felt like these didn't really enumerate all the possibilities. So Sindra and I worked on having a more granular approach that also kind of makes more sense, because thinking in terms of flex direction and justify content and align items can be a little bit confusing sometimes. So what we ended up going with is this 3-letter approach where instead of doing display box, for example, you can see this is display box right now, just to show you it's live, that's L box and R box. So those are the old ones. Those still work, but kind of intended not to use those anymore. You can do, the first letter is, I'm describing the syntax for these values now. So the first letter is horizontal or vertical, so H or V. So let's do horizontal for now. And then the second letter is the vertical axis, so top, center, bottom. Top, center, or bottom. And then so let's do center for now. And then the third letter is the horizontal axis. So actually let's do horizontal top right for now. So as you can see, this will be horizontally, the flex direction will be row, and it will be at the top right. And so you don't really need to think about flex direction, row, justify content, and align items start, which I think that is this. Align items start. Yeah, okay, I was right. So it's just like, I feel like it's so much more natural to do it this way. And so yeah, and if I switch to vertical, vertical, center, center. So it just, to me, it feels really natural. And then there's also stretch or space between, depending on which letter it is and the flex direction. So if you do vertical, center, and then S, I think that's going to be stretch. So you can see it's doing align item stretch, and that's kind of sort of the default. Like if you do normal, it does the same thing. You can see, and I think normal is the align items default. Like if we uncheck this and then go to computed and look at align items, it's normal. Yeah. So yeah, I guess you can think of S as somewhat of a default, but then if we do S here, it's going to do space between as well. So, and then if it's horizontal, the S, the third letter will do space between, and then the second letter will do stretch. So that might be a little bit confusing, but I think once you get used to it and use it, as I still have to do as well, I think it'll be pretty intuitive once we like start implementing these. So try to use them and let us know what you think. Also, to get like the rationale of this, to kind of get into that, it's it's not really about like typing fewer characters. That I think typing fewer characters is generally correlated with this feeling of momentum that you get when you don't have to type a bunch of stuff. Like for example, I can't believe people write normal CSS where they go like display, flex, justify, content, center. Like you're writing a whole book just to do one display thing. It's crazy. So, and I think that does affect like your momentum quite a bit. But on top of that, it's also just much more comprehensive. I was going through an old code base, an Imba code base, and there were all these flex properties, and it just takes much longer to figure out what's going on when you're reading, even in the Imba syntax, which is much shorter already. You have to read all this stuff. Like you have to read 4 properties to understand what's going on, and so it takes longer to like kind of just understand what's going on in code. Where if it's horizontal top right, you know immediately just looking at that, and it's also much easier to edit the text. Like at least I use Vim, so I can do delete around word and stuff. Like so, it's not just about typing fewer characters. I really think there's a lot more there to that. Yeah, and I think it just feels much swifter. But anyways, don't want to ramble about that too long. So I think I covered everything with that. So let's just change this to center. Oh, and also there's actually one more thing. Sindra mentioned that another nice use case for this is it's just so much easier to make mobile menus, for example, where like you could do, if it has the mobile class, then make it vertical center. And so it's just like, I think you can do this. Yeah, so it's just much more succinct this way than typing a bunch of properties and having it really clutter everything up. So I'll just go back to showing you hover to show you that it works that way. So yeah. Okay. Next, we have %sign left. So kind of on this subject of CSS, I'll start by talking about, like, we're not using style sheets anymore. But in Imba, what I personally used to do, because I wanted the actual tag to remain as clutter-free as possible, so I could visually see what's going on really quickly, like the layout of things. So what I personally did at the beginning was I would put all my CSS above the self tag and kind of treat it as like a traditional style sheet, where like I would do stuff like this, and then so I would have like all this CSS at the top. Like obviously it's just, for example, it's all the same right now, but these would be different classes. But and so the result of this was a much cleaner tag down here. It was very clear what was going on. But at the same time, if I need to extract, whenever I needed to extract an element into its own tag or move it to a separate file, it became, because this isn't like automatically organized or anything, it became really cumbersome to figure out which classes that tag needed and move them to that file or whatever. So then I started thinking, okay, it's just better to have all the CSS be local as possible to a tag. So just literally either doing inline styles or doing CSS blocks. So you could do BG yellow for or whatever. But then with inline styles, also it feels like almost every time I write inline styles, eventually it would get so long, especially if you're writing traditional flex stuff, that you kind of just want to turn this into its own CSS block, and then it's kind of annoying. You have to go and paste it and do all this crap, right? So yeah, so I literally, even if it's one property, you can see I just write CSS, and I think it looks cleaner because there's no there's less clutter inside of these tags themselves. So anyways, the reason I bring all that up is because as a result of this kind of pattern or convention of just putting the CSS directly as local as possible to every tag, these really no longer have the tags themselves. The elements really are all divs, right? But the problem is, if they're all divs, it's kind of difficult to understand what's going on. Like nothing has a semantic name, so you kind of have to figure out what exactly it's doing without any help. So one thing that I was doing in my code bases was just naming everything with classes. So if this is a box, I would just name it .box. But then you have to worry about conflicts, especially if you're in a large code base. now you have to wonder, is there a box class somewhere? And it's just bothersome to think about that. So I talked to Cinder about that, and then he re-enabled an old feature which was more specifically or more strictly scoped class names. So these % box things, the % box will translate to the class name % box, as you can see here. And the intention is that these aren't affected by global styles. So if you do global CSS % box, this shouldn't work, but right now it does. We still have to disable it from working. But anyways, at least for conventional purposes currently, it really is I think it's a great convention, and have been naming so many elements, and it actually works really well and makes it so much easier to tell what's going on very quickly. So I'll rename these to box again. Yeah, so that's what that is. If you're wondering what all the % signs are, that's what they are. We also have more granular colors, so we can do, you have BG red 4 and obviously red 5, and you can see, I know it's difficult, like I'm typing and then you see the updated view, so then like it's kind of hard to switch between. So I guess just trust me or pause it, whatever. But yeah, so we can also do like red, like halfway between red 4 and red 5 would be red 50. So if you saw it change, there was a change there. And that's essentially like implying a decimal point after the 4. Like it's kind of like red 4.5. So you can actually remove the 0, but then you don't actually write a decimal point. I was just using that for illustrative purposes. So red 45 essentially kind of means red 4.5. So if that's kind of a convoluted way of explaining it, just forget about it. You can do like red 488 if you want. Yeah, or red 458. Yeah, so that would be red 4.58 basically. Hopefully that made sense. You can also have color variables now. So it is kind of a nice separation between normal CSS variables. Like it's very clear that this is a color, and it's like nice for color schemes and whatnot. But also this enables using opacity. So we can do BG #box BG here, but now I can do opacity on it, which you couldn't do with CSS variables. So you can see this this blue box is at 10% opacity now. So yeah, that's that. .env file support. That documentation coming on that one. These two CSS selectors, or modify, I don't even know what they would be called, but anyways, yeah, this one has existed for a while, but isn't really talked about anywhere. That's basically if any element up the DOM hierarchy has a class, I believe all the way up till root, it will apply whatever styles. So if I'll take the red class off this one, and then you can see self has the red class. So if I do CSS .red, basically if any tag up the hierarchy has the red class, it will apply the following, and I can just go BG red. Why isn't it working? Okay, it must have been like, can't like part. Can it not parse this? Okay, I guess it has to be on a new line or something. Yeah. Okay, so since red here exists, it gives it the red class. But then, you might be worried about conflicts, right? So so Cinder introduced this selector, which lets you select a specific parent, like a specific amount of levels up the hierarchy. So you can do CSS @caret.red. So that's specifically saying if the parent one level up has red. And to show you it working, I'll just make a div here and then indent that. I'll wrap the box in a div, and you can see the parent now is this div, which doesn't have the red class. But if I add another one, say I want to go two levels up, it applies. So that's that. New shorthands new aliases for min height, max height, min width, max width. Yeah, just nice. It's been long overdue in my opinion. So I'm really happy to have these. And yeah, CSS min. I'll do max width 10 pixels, max height 10 pixels. Yeah. So Cool. Okay, and then there's also new values, CSS values. So you, instead of writing pos absolute, you can just write pos abs or position relative. You can just write rel. The only caveat with this is that these shorthands can't be interpolated. So if I understood Cinder's explanation, you can't do something like this. It would have to be relative. It would have to be the full thing. So yeah. Also, he is interested in adding more of these. So I would like to start adding shorter properties for things that obviously are just way too long. Like, for example, text transform capitalize. I really think this can just be TT cap. And instead of uppercase, it can just be TT up. And so this like really makes it like you might have like a global, you might have global CSS dot up and then TT uppercase. I had styles like that, and it's just like, it's only because writing this is so cumbersome. So maybe that's just me, but I feel like it's cleaner. But then also, if we could just do TT up, I wouldn't need this class. So I'm gonna be like trying to add some of these as well. So that's kind of, I think that's kind of exciting. And then these shorthands. Anyways, I think that's it. Hopefully that wasn't too haphazard or confusing. So let me know if that was an acceptable level of polish, or if this format is interesting to you. Yeah, so I think that's it. Have a good day. Enjoy the new version.